Hi, Destiny Kids. Welcome to our week called The Best in the Hard Times. And you might see my puppy wandering through the screen a bit because he is here with me today. There he goes. Bye, Fallon. Good to see you. I love you. You're very cute. Oh, now he's back again. We are talking today about how God is with us even when times are hard, and how, yes, times will get hard. And I feel like this is really important to tell you because sometimes people have this idea that Christians don't have struggles and Christians don't get sick. And if you love God, then everything is sunshine and roses, which means that everything is going really great. You know, everything is awesome. But let's face it, this is not true. And it is not what the Bible teaches us. The Bible teaches us that we will have hard times, just like people who don't believe in God have hard times. And what we need to remember, though, is that we are not alone in those times, that we can pray and ask God for guidance and help. Our verse this week, our brand new verse, is James 4:8. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. And have you ever heard of meeting someone halfway, where two people both move together?
We've already talked about how bad things happen to good people and hard times come to good people. And being a Christian does not mean that there will not be struggles in life. But being a Christian does mean that you can pray and ask God for help, and that you have God to lean on when you're struggling. That's what it means to be a Christian and go through hard times. So here's our first story. The scouts have returned, announced the Israelite at the tent opening. 12 men entered the tent. One man represented each of the tribes of Israel. They had been gone for 40 days, scouting the land that had been promised to them by God when they left Egypt. Palti and Guel brought forward one cluster of grapes so large they had to tie it to a stick and carry it together. Joshua tore off a grape and handed it to Moses, who took a large bite. It was delicious. A single grape was almost as large as his head. Look, said Joshua, this is the land we were promised. Isn't it magnificent? The whole land is like this. The rivers are clear and full of life. The honeybees make their homes in the trees everywhere. Animals roam the hills and fields, fat and ready for slaughter. Moses was on his feet, his face lit with joy. Praise God, he shouted. Humph! A lot of good it does us, said Guel. Speak the whole truth, Joshua. He and Palti set the grapes down and advanced on Joshua. You paint an unfair picture of this land. Joshua turned to them. I am saying what matters. The land is inhabited, said Palti. As far as the eye can see, tribes fight against each other. The Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Amalekites, and who knows what other tribes are already settled there. Their cities are massive, shouted Nabi, and fortified with walls, as thick as chariots and as high as the sky, added Sethur. Shammah yelled above the crowd, We will never take this land from its people. They are stronger than we are. Moses sank to his chair in despair. Igal came and sat beside Moses. This is an impossible task, he said. We should go back to Egypt. Joshua came and stood before Igal. But we were slaves in Egypt. Better to live as a slave than killed in a war we cannot win, snapped Igal. Enough, said a powerful voice. A confident young man stepped in front of the crowd. With his back to Moses, Joshua, and Igal. That's enough. He drew his sword. Let's go and take this land. Don't be afraid of them. He turned to Moses. We will win. No, we won't, Caleb, came the low voice of Gadi, the tallest and toughest-looking man among the scouts. He stepped forward to stand in front of Moses. Look at me. Take a good, long look at me. I am the tallest and the strongest of all the Israelites. He leaned down closer to Moses' face, and Moses could see fear in his eyes. If you send us into this land, we will be sending our warriors to fight against men twice my height. The other men nodded, and Gadi flung his arms out wide. Even I look like a grasshopper compared to these men. All of the men are that size, shouted Gadiel. Shaphat cried out, We have come so far. We have traveled so long. Why would our God lead us to a land that we cannot occupy? The men argued and shouted for a long time, and in the end they were told to present their findings to all of the Israelites. But when they did, no one would listen to Caleb and Joshua. They only heard the bad things, and they were very afraid. Caleb and Joshua would not be silent, though. Don't be afraid, they shouted. The land is flowing with milk and honey. Don't turn away from God. They don't have the protection we have. God will give us this land. The people were too afraid and angry. They refused to believe the good report. Be silent, they said. If you do not stop, we will remove you from this earth. But before they could lay a hand on the two men, the glory of the Lord shone before the tent of meeting, and all the people fell down afraid. You will win this land, God said. But all of you who did not believe in me will not live here. Now, go out to the desert. The next time I bring the Israelites back here, there will be a whole generation of conquerors among you, men and women of faith, who will see beyond the difficulties to a rich and fertile land. They will take this land, along with Caleb and Joshua, who never doubted me. When we hear the story, we have 12 people talking, and only 2 of them are saying, we can do this, we can do this. Everyone else is saying, oh no, we can't, it's too hard. And what did the Israelites miss? Because they didn't trust that God had their best interests in mind. They missed living in the promised land. All those adults who were there when the first report came in, they wandered the desert and they died after many years. And it wasn't until the children had grown up and were ready that God brought them back. And you have to understand, though, that there were serious obstacles in their way. Although the land was everything God had promised, there were scary things there too. Warriors that were huge and powerful and scary looking. And the Israelites, you have to remember, had just been wandering through a desert, so they might have felt like they weren't prepared. But the thing is that God prepares us when struggles come, and we just have to remember to lean on Him. You have to be patient and not afraid, and you have to trust in God. And I know it's easy to say, but it's so important. You do not quit, and you do not give up. A lot of people, they say, why would God let this happen to me? Why did these bad things happen? Why do I have to struggle? Why do I have to go through this? And the truth is that it's going to rain. And it's going to rain on everybody. And that's a metaphor for it's going to be hard. Life is going to have struggles. Everybody has struggles. Rich people have struggles. Poor people have struggles. People who have big families have struggles. People who are only children have struggles. So you're going to have struggles. But how you deal with those struggles, that really matters. Trusting in God when things look bleak and hard, when you just can't see any way out, it's a really important thing. And trusting in God when you struggle can make the struggle easier. Hidden potential. What was that? Did he hear something? The Midianites had been raiding all of the Israelite farms along their borders, and so many people were starving. Gideon had harvested the last of his wheat and was crouching in the wine vat, threshing it as best he could, so the Midianites couldn't see him. It wasn't easy, and he didn't have the space he needed, and he had to keep stopping and listening. Threshing was noisy work. Nope, that was definitely a sound. Someone was out there. As quietly as he could, Gideon crept to the edge of the wine vat and peeked over the top. Standing right in front of the vat, right in front of where he was peeking, was the most amazing being Gideon had ever seen. Tall, strong, powerful, and more perfect than Gideon could have imagined. A smile was on the stranger's face. Obviously, he was an angel of the Lord. "Greetings, the Lord is with you, valiant warrior," the angel said. Valiant warrior? Hadn't he just been hiding in a vat from his enemies? The angel looked like a valiant warrior. Gideon did not. The angel was serious, though. He was not joking. And although Gideon had been terrified a moment before, now he felt safe. So he said, "Valiant warrior, the Lord is with me, please. Please, angel, if the Lord is with me, where are all his great wonders? Where is the prosperity that he promised the Israelites? The Lord has abandoned us, and we are being raided by the Midianites." "Abandoned you?" the angel said, their head cocking to one side. "Absolutely not. Go. Defeat your enemy. Deliver your people from the hands of the Midianites. The Lord is with you," the angel said. Gideon crouched in the wine vat again and shouted over the top to the angel. "Please," he begged. "How can I do this? My tribe isn't powerful, and I am the youngest of my family. How can I deliver Israel?" The angel looked at Gideon and said, "Easily. The Lord is with you." Was that true? Gideon wondered. He and the angel of the Lord spoke for the rest of the day, and it wasn't easy to coax Gideon from the wine vat, but eventually he came out. He was scared to go into battle, but God knew that. So God sent a servant, Purah, to stand beside him. When Gideon started to obey God, he discovered that he had a head for strategy. He had talents and gifts he didn't even know about. One time he was facing a massive army, and he only had 300 soldiers. He waited until night. Then he and 100 soldiers crept to the edge of the enemy's camps. And all together they blew war horns and smashed jars and shouted and lit torches. The other Israelites did the same, making it seem like there were soldiers from the mountain all the way to the edge of the camp. When the enemy saw and heard this, they thought an army twice their size was rushing towards them, and they ran away, abandoning all their war equipment. Those who didn't flee became so panicked that they attacked each other, and Gideon didn't even have to fight that battle. So we are talking about trusting God in the hard times. Gideon was going through some really hard times. All the people of Israel were. They had come to the promised land, and they thought that they were going to have easy lives after struggling in the desert for so long. They hoped that they would have lots of food and that they would be at peace. And the Midianites were making the lives of the Israelites very hard because they kept taking their food and their animals and setting their crops on fire. So after struggling for so long and being so afraid, God said, "Okay, go and defeat your enemy. I'm with you." And when Gideon did, what happened? Well, he defeated the enemy. And some of his battles were so easy, he didn't even have to fight. And Gideon learned a lot about himself. And when Gideon was feeling inadequate, like he really didn't have what it took to be a good leader, God sent people to help him. We have to always remember that even though times are hard, that God has our best interests in mind, and he loves us. And although we will still struggle, that we have a loving God who is there for us. And we never struggle alone. I'm going to show you something really neat today. What would you guess that is? Okay, who guessed graham crackers? There's not graham crackers. This is called a fire starter. And what you do with a fire starter is when you're building your campfire, you put this down on the bottom of the pit, and when you light it, it actually stays lit for a long time. Well, longer than the little tiny sticks that you use when you're building a fire, and longer than paper. So you put this in the bottom of your fire pit and you light it. All right. How about this? Anybody know? This is not a key to a van. If that's what you guessed, you're wrong. This is what they call flint and steel. So what you do is you brush this along here and it sparks, and the sparks fall down into your fire pit and you can light your fire that way. Another way to light a fire is with a lighter. I don't have a lighter with me here today, but I'm sure most of you have seen a lighter or know what it looks like. Here is another great fire starting tool, and this one is new to my camp pack this year. Wait, Meredith, those are just boring old matches. No, they're not boring old matches. These are special matches. These are waterproof matches. So I am going to show you guys a quick video to show you how all these things work. Enjoy.
So here I have decided to make a fire. In the fire pit you can see some dried pine boughs from our Christmas tree, and that little square in the center there is the fire starter I was talking about. I've also found a pine cone and a very dry leaf. Now, generally speaking, that should make a really good starter for a campfire. So here I'm using my flint and steel, and I am trying to get that leaf to catch. As you can see, I'm creating lots of great sparks, and there's smoke, but I'm not getting it to light. And when I pull up the leaf, you can see that there are holes burned through the leaf. So the leaf has burned, but it wouldn't catch fire. I worked that for 8 minutes. So then I thought, I need a little success, so I decided I'd show you what it looks like when somebody does it with a match. I've got one of my waterproof matches here. And boom! There's a fire. I really like cooking over the fire. But you know what I like even more? Is when my husband cooks over the fire. Because, as you know, because most of you are children, it's really nice when somebody else cooks for you. And maybe the adults feel that way too. It's really nice when you're the one who doesn't have to cook. So when my husband cooks over the campfire, and I just get to sit there and enjoy the fire, that's the best for me. Then, once I had successfully lit the fire using my match, I thought, all right, I'll go back and try again with my flint and steel. But this time I remembered that and I can't believe I forgot this, that when you're using that fire starting block that I showed you, you're supposed to break it up because it's just a great big solid mass of flammable, which means that it can catch on fire, flammable material. And I had forgotten to break it up into pieces. So this time, what you can see me doing is I'm breaking the fire starter into little parts. It comes apart so easily. And I'm just pulling little pieces off and putting them in a nice pile so that when my sparks fall, rather than bouncing off into the leaves or trying to catch this really dense material on fire, it's catching much smaller pieces, which is so much easier. And you can see here, voila, nice fire. Now, if I were going to be keeping my fire going, then I would have had little branches ready, and then branches that were a little bit bigger, and then some sticks, and then eventually logs, which I would feed into the fire bit by bit, allowing it to get very warm enough to burn a larger piece of wood. Or another thing, if I were going to have my fire going for a while, is I would have built up my fire, leaving a small opening so that I could have put my fire starter down in the bottom there, and then the fire starter would have burned, would have caught these small sticks on fire, and then would have caught the small branches on fire, and it would have just built up into that nice big burning blaze. However, I knew that I wasn't going to keep going with my fire, so I just put a little bit there in the fire pit to show you how it works. After lighting the campfire with my match and successfully lighting it with my flint there, I wanted to show you how easy it is to light it with a lighter. And if you live somewhere where you can do campfires, maybe you might want to think about having a campfire tonight.
It's a pretty sunny day. That makes a lot of people feel very, very happy. I don't know if you're one of them or not, but I know many people who feel at their best on sunny, bright days. I'm actually not one of them. I am sitting in the sun because it's healthy to sit in the sun for a little bit of time, and I thought that maybe you would enjoy a little bit of sunlight in a video. But personally, I really like rainy days. I like snowy days. So I've had my favorite weather for the last few months, and now it's somebody else's turn, so maybe it's you. Enjoy the sun. We're going to be talking this week about trusting God during the hard times. And it's really important to understand that, yes, there will be hard times. There is no getting around that. Christians will struggle. We all have struggles. People who have lots of money have their own problems. People who have a little bit of money have their own problems. People who have many, many children have problems. And people who only have one child have problems. People who have no children have problems. Although generally those problems don't involve children. The thing I want you to understand is that when you are struggling, that you are not alone. And as a Christian, you have God on your side, which means that you have someone you can call on, and you can pray to God, and you can ask Him to help you. And He will help you in the situation, but He can also help you with your spirit, calming your spirit, refreshing your spirit, and He can help us with our minds, thinking positive thoughts, thinking about success, thinking about how to solve the problem. Those are all ways that God can help us. In the Bible, it says that the rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous, which means that God acknowledges that life is hard. Life is full of struggles. But if you've ever heard of the poem Footprints, then you will know that many people feel that when they struggle, that they know that they have God on their side. Throughout history, people have struggled with things that we do not struggle with now. For example, before we had factories, everything had to be made by hand. And that is hard work. If you've ever had to make anything by hand, you'll know. And before we had mass farms where they produced lots of food and then sold it to grocery stores, everybody had to grow their own food or trade with their neighbor for other food. So that was a lot of work, and people used to spend a lot of time making, finding, or preparing food. And now we go to a grocery store, unless you're a farmer. And you should always remember, though, that even though you're not growing your own food, and even though you're not butchering your own cattle, that there are still farmers out there doing that. And that if we didn't have so many farmers, we wouldn't have grocery stores like we do. Another thing to be aware of is people who drive trucks. Truckers get the food from the farm to the store. Without truckers, we wouldn't be able to have grocery stores either. So before we had trucks, people used to load everything that they were taking to the market onto the back of their wagons, and they used to travel the distance themselves, which means they had to take time away from their farm to get the food to the market to sell it. So all of those really complicated things have been made easier now with technology. And just think of how hard it was, especially if the farmer was sick or if one of their children was sick. Yeah. But now we have hospitals, we have family doctors, so I can go and see my doctor. Actually, I can call my doctor on the phone. There's another invention that's helped me. I can call my doctor on the phone, go into the doctor's office, get seen by my doctor, and here in Canada, that's all paid for by taxes, so I don't have to worry about, do I have enough money to take my kid to the doctor? But long ago, you either had to send somebody with a horse or a wagon to go get the doctor, or you had to take your sick family member or friend to the doctor and hope the doctor could see them, hope the doctor was available. And so again, that's more technology that's made life easy. So people long ago had struggles that are so different from our struggles now. And I am not trying to diminish the struggles we have now, because they are big problems. They are hard problems too. They are unique to this time in history. But no matter what the struggle is, God is with you. And you have to remember that everyone has their own struggle. So I have a totally different struggle than my children, than my friends, than my spouse. I have friends who struggle with addiction. And if you don't know what addiction is, I'll tell you. Addiction is when there is something in your life that you feel like you can't stop doing or taking. Some people get addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, addicted to bad habits. I have friends who struggle with emotional problems like anger or sadness. So everybody has their own struggles. Everybody's struggles are unique. It's important to remember that just because something's easy for you, it's not necessarily easy for your neighbor. But no matter what the struggle, you can call on God and He can help you. I am going to tell you the poem, Footprints in the Sand. And this is anonymous. Nobody knows who wrote it, but it's gone all around the world and been translated into many different languages. One night, I dreamed a dream. As I was walking along the beach with my Lord, across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me, and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that many times along the path of my life, especially the very lowest and saddest times, there was only 1 set of footprints. This really troubled me. So I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only 1 set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I needed you the most, you would leave me. He whispered, "My precious child, I love you and will never leave you. Never, ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only 1 set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." Isn't that nice? It's reassuring. And it's very helpful to know that we are never alone. Even when we think we're alone, we're not alone. Because there'll be lots of times in your life when you think you're the only one going through whatever you're going through. But that is not the case. You are never alone. And today, we're going to talk a lot about how it's important to trust God when times are tough. When everything that you see around you is bleak and dark and discouraging. When you feel overwhelmed, do you know what overwhelmed means? It means like all your troubles are covering you and you can't get out. When you feel like that, it is so important to remind yourself that you are a child of God and that you are not alone. And our scripture today come near to God and He will come near to you is so important. When you feel like you're flailing out there all alone, that's the moment to reach your hand up to God and ask Him for help. Because when you do, He will answer. God does answer our prayers. It's so vital for you to understand that. All right, it's time for the Your Turn Challenge. How did you guys do last week? Last week we talked about trying to make sure that every day you did something to feed your spirit. And I'll tell you, I actually did a pretty good job. And next week I have a little video journal that I'm going to show you of how I remember to feed my spirit every day. And today our Your Turn Challenge is this. Trusting God can be hard, and I totally acknowledge that. Lots of things in life are hard though. We don't quit. We don't give up. If you've ever seen anybody take a rock and turn it into something shiny, like a gem, if you've ever seen that process, they sometimes use something called a tumbler, and it moves and bounces and bangs around, boom, boom, boom. It's a really neat process. And for us, life is like that. We are like that rock, tumbling around, getting polished with every time a challenge comes our way. Here is your Turn Challenge. Ask an adult in your life to give you a difficult task. For example, sometimes I might leave something on the stove a little longer than I should, and I get like a crusty residue on the bottom of a pan or a pot. Scrubbing that residue off is hard work. So you could say, do you have something I can scrub? If perhaps you wrote on the wall when you were younger, maybe now is the time to clean that off the wall. So ask an adult to give you a challenging task and then complete it. And if you want to tell me what that task was, you can send me an email. I am Meredith Wood. Send it to destinykids@rlcsimco.com. Tell me, what was the challenge that you were given and how did you accomplish it? And how did that make you feel to accomplish that task? I think you're going to be surprised. And Fuelan, he likes to come to work with me sometimes. He is going to be doing his first camping experience this summer. So we're working on getting him used to being in different places and meeting different people and remembering that he has to do as he's told, which is hard for a dog, just like it's hard for us, just like it's hard, us grown-ups, us people, you children, sometimes it's tough. Apparently, he's a little camera shy. There he is. All right, so today on our Remember tree, we are hanging this. This is the waterproof match that I used in the video that we did earlier. Now, how do you think a waterproof match will be helpful when you're camping? Well, I'll tell you. This summer, when I went to Algonquin Park with my dad, my sister, my nephew, and my oldest boy, we had rain the one morning, and I had a fire starter, which is, you saw it in the fire starter video, and I had my flint and steel, which you saw in the video. The flint and steel, you strike it along, you rub along the two metals, and what happens is that little flakes fall off, they ignite and fall off, and you can start a fire that way. And yes, I have started a fire using my flint and steel. And I also had a lighter. So I thought I was pretty prepared, but it was raining. And I went to start the camping stove, because we had a little tiny camping stove, a portable one, because we were trying to get up early, get moving, get packed, and with all the rain, we couldn't do our breakfast over the fire pit quick. Well, we couldn't do it quickly. I could have done it, but it would have taken a lot longer, and it was time we didn't have. So I lit the camping stove, no problem. I had my lighter. I put my lighter on the edge of a little tree stump, and then I turned the knob, which makes the gas go higher or lower, and what I accidentally did was I put it too low and it went out. And I thought, no problem. So I went to reach over and get my lighter, and it fell into a puddle. So everybody else was asleep, because I was the first one up and I didn't want to wake anybody up, so I'm shaking my lighter and no good. I can't get it started. And that would have been a really good time to have waterproof matches, because even if I had knocked the whole thing of matches over into the water, I could have picked it up, wiped it off, lit it, no problem, like you saw in our video. So waterproof matches are a great thing to have, and I'll tell you, I will never go camping without them now. But what do waterproof matches do to remind us that God is with us in the hard times? Well, my example of the camping story is one thing. Times can be tough. It can be pouring rain, but you still will have the resources of the kingdom of heaven to help you do what you need to do. Just like my waterproof match would have been there to help me light that fire. So this is going on our Remember tree. If I can hang it without dropping it. Let's try that again. Tiny little thing. Maybe I should put it more forward right here. Here we go. A waterproof match to remind us that God is with us in the hard times. We're going to do something a little different next week. Next week we're going to review. We have done 7 weeks of our 13. And we're going to talk about each of the things on our tree and our memory verses and play some memory verse games. And hopefully then when we start week 8, the week after that, everything will be fresh in your minds. So a quick review for you. Trail Mix reminds us to be generous. It reminds us that when we don't hold back and we give freely and generously of the things that God has given us, it makes things better for everybody. The mirror. What God sees is more important than what I see. And I broke our tree again. Oh, Meredith, this poor dry tree. I have to be a little more gentle. There we go. We also had the compass. Where's our compass? There it is. Our compass. Having godly wisdom is more important than being right. That's what our compass is supposed to remind us. Our binoculars were all about God's justice. Here they are. God's justice shows me what is fair. Ooh, they're heavy binoculars. Then we had our map. Our map, choosing God's way, is more important than choosing our own way. We have our spiritual power food. Hi, puppy. To remind us to feed our spirits. And now this week, our waterproof match. God is with me even when times are hard. Well, Phelan, should we say goodbye to everybody? He doesn't feel like talking. That's all right, puppy. That's a good sit. Well, I'll see you guys next week for our fun review week.